It's talking about my generation.
Oh, happy day to you. I am Jen Yates. You're locked on to LRS102.com, The Walrus. Broadcasting live from the Launch Louisville studios down on East Broadway in Louisville, Kentucky. And I'm always excited, especially on a Monday, because I have Mr. Mike Hood up in the studios. How you doing, Mike?
Fantastic, Jen. Thanks for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming in. I heard you have all kinds of crazy, fun stories to talk about. So I was like, I want to get this dude up in the studio. And we've been trying for a minute, and we finally got you.
We finally got around to it.
I'm excited about it. So, Mike, let's start with telling listeners, hopefully they know who you are, and if they don't, I want them to after this interview. So, you play music all around town. You've been in Louisville for a long time. You did a stint in New Orleans, which I really love. We're going to talk all things New Orleans because it's one of my favorite places ever in the country.
You can do that.
Yeah, but let's start by telling everybody just a little bit about yourself and how did you get your start in music?
Wow. Let's see. Man, I guess I got started, Jen, probably when I was about 12 years old. One of my dearest friends, his name is Eric Smalley, who plays in a band called Super B, a good hard rock band. He started playing guitar through his father, and I would come around and sit on his bed and watch him play the guitar.
Wow.
When we're kids, we're 12 years old. Well, after about 3 months of watching him play the guitar, I looked at him one day. I said, you know what? I said, that doesn't look that hard. I said, I think I want to get me a guitar. And he says, oh, Mike, he says, I already play guitar. He goes, why don't you learn how to play the organ and the piano? He said,
cool.
And he says, my dad will show you a few things.
Yeah.
His dad's name was Bill. And so we went downstairs, and his dad said, oh, you want to learn how to play music? He goes, well, here, let me show you the most important thing. And he showed me 3 chords.
Wow.
And the song was Louie Louie.
Oh, perfect. I love that song.
So
Great song.
So we've got the 1 chord, the 4 chord, and the 5 chord, and
that's pretty much most of music right there.
That's the blues. That's a million rock and roll songs.
Yeah.
Bluegrass and everything else country.
Yeah. So you just started at what, 12? Age 12?
I guess I was about 12.
Yeah.
And he showed me a few things, and then maybe about a month or 2 later, he showed me how to play the Doors' "Light My Fire."
Oh, that do.
Both hands and
Wow.
the whole thing, and
you're gonna love this. I actually own a 1962 Farfisa Compact Deluxe. I own one.
give it to me. I want it.
I'll let you play it for sure because I don't ever play the thing.
That'd be great.
And it's super heavy to like lug around everywhere I go.
He had Bill had a Vox Continental.
Wow.
And it sounds like hell, but
Yeah.
but it sounds kind of neat actually too at the same time.
Yeah.
So he showed me how to play "Light My Fire," and I went home that day and I practiced up, and I called him on the phone. This is before cell phones, of course. I called him on the dial phone,
Right.
and I said, Eric, I said, let me talk to your dad. He went, well, for what? I said, I got to play the song for him. He showed me. So he gets on the phone. He says, well, let me hear it. I played it one time through, and he said, Mike, I think you might want to stick with this.
That's cool.
And that's about all it took. I went, yeah, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And
Here
so who were your like main influences growing up other than people surrounding you? Did you have any like artists that you were like, I love that dude, and I want to be like that?
It's, I liked The Doors a lot because that was one of those songs.
Me too.
Because of the keys.
Yeah.
Not so much into them anymore, but
Yeah.
I still respect what they did a lot.
Weren't they the band that didn't have a bass player?
Well, I think
Doors?
they might have had a bass player on some of the recordings, but live, I don't believe they ever used a bass player.
I don't think so.
I think Waylon Jennings actually played bass on L.A. Woman.
Are you serious?
Well, don't quote me on that,
Yeah.
but I have heard that.
By the way, we spun last week. My friend Jim Higdon, who wrote the Cornbread Mafia and runs cornbreadhemp.com, was up in here talking everything cornbread and CBD and all that stuff. And he brought in a live Waylon Jennings record from the early 70s, and it was Waylon doing Me and Bobby McGee.
Yeah.
Yeah, by Chris Christopherson, obviously, but most people know it by Janis Joplin.
Of course.
But he was educating me on that Chris Christopherson didn't even hear Me and Bobby McGee or Janis's version until much later after her death.
Well, the story I heard on that was Chris had the song, and Janis wanted to record it, and Chris said he didn't want her to record it, but she went behind his back and did it anyway.
Oh, wow. Isn't that ironic? Because it's the most famous version that we hear today.
It is, and strangely enough, when she recorded it, she only recorded it with an acoustic guitar and her voice.
Yeah.
And the band actually recorded the other parts
Like separate.
posthumously.
After her death. Wow.
Because the Pearl album didn't come out until
After her death.
Janice had passed away.
Right. Which is so crazy to me. There's so many artists that have done that who have passed, and then their stuff gets really famous. Isn't that nuts? Yeah, and some artists actually make more money after their death than they do during their like living years.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, it is bizarre. It's weird how that happens. I know a lot of artists who have been in like debt, and I'm just talking famously, and then once they pass, they're out of debt, and their family's doing really well. You know what I mean?
At least somebody gets it on down the line, right?
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I'm a big, huge fan of Waylon Jennings. We have Shooter Jennings right there on the wall. We actually here at LRS have an Outlaw Country Hour on the weekends, where we play all the Outlaw Country guys' kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like Ben Haggard and Shooter Jennings and Hank the Third and all the great stuff,
God love them.
Yeah, God love them. I'm a huge Outlaw Country fan, so.
Me too.
Yeah, so the Doors were a huge influence. I also love the Doors.
Yeah, right at the beginning, the Doors were pretty big influence, Ray Manzarek, and then we started really listening to the blues. Eric's dad, Bill Smalley, he turned us on to the blues, so we were listening to Muddy Waters.
Oh, yeah.
And we were listening to a young Stevie Ray Vaughan. We had never seen a picture of Stevie Ray Vaughan. We thought he was that African.
Yeah,
we thought he was African American.
Yeah, and he wasn't. Right. Same when I heard Amy Winehouse. I pictured in my head an African American lady with this big vocal. And then I saw her and went, what? That's what she looks like?
Yeah, when we saw a picture of Stevie Ray Vaughan, we was like, he's a white guy from Texas. He's a little skinny. What is going on here?
Right.
Where's this music coming from?
Yeah, exactly.
So we were we really dug deep into the blues at a young age, really before it got famous again. Stevie Ray Vaughan, God bless him, he really brought back the blues, I think, to the mainstream. Mm-hmm. And the blues has a funny way of coming back around again through somebody's music. The Stones. The Stones really brought the blues back.
Yeah.
In the 60s.
And then Zeppelin tried to do it, yeah.
And then you had all those bands.
Yeah.
But so we really got turned on to the blues, and we thought Robert Johnson, too. It's when they reissued the Robert Johnson box set.
I just got cold chills. I get cold chills when I talk about Robert Johnson because I went down to the crossroads where he died and got to see all that, and it was just mind-blowing to me.
I've been there. I have a picture in front of his tomb.
Yeah.
Down on Money Road.
Man, his story is so sad and so crazy, Supposedly sleeping with a white girl, did he, man?
Well, I actually met Honey Boy Edwards. I did a gig with Honey Boy, and Honey Boy was friends with Robert Johnson and traveled with him. And Honey Boy said, that's what he said. He said, white man killed Robert Johnson.
Yeah, and, I agree with that.
And he also told me a very good story about the Crossroads myth.
Tell me. We got 2 hours. I'm like, tell all the stories you want.
Well, this is a good one. He told us. I told all the guys in the band when we went up to play with him. We played on the Outer Banks of the Carolinas at the first free man's colony, which is called Roanoke Island. Not the Roanoke the colony, but Roanoke Island. And I told all the guys at the band, I said, look, nobody mentioned Robert Johnson to Honey Boy because that's probably all he gets. People want to know about Robert Johnson because he was friends with him and traveled with him. So I said, please don't anybody mention Robert Johnson. Everybody said, all right. I said, if you mention Robert Johnson, you're not getting paid. So nobody mentioned Robert Johnson. And we're hanging with Honey Boy in a bar the night we get there. And finally I brought up the fact, I asked him, I said, Honey Boy, I said, did you guys believe in all that hoodoo and all that?
They sold his soul to the devil.
And Honey Boy started laughing. He had a very high-pitched voice. And he went, He said, nah, we didn't believe in none of that old stuff. He said, matter of fact, he said, Robert Johnson used to just tell women that as to get a little pussy.
Yay!
And, pardon my French, but I believe it is French.
You can use French here all you want.
So we all had a big laugh about that.
Oh, yeah, I had to do that.
You got it. So we had a big laugh about that. He said, no, he said he just used to tell women that. He said because it made him seem more mysterious.
Yeah, I could see that.
And I just looked at everybody, and we all looked at each other and went, wow.
Smart, man.
There it came from, right out of the horse's mouth.
Right. That's crazy. The most fascinating thing to me about Robert Johnson was seeing the guitars he had made out of like plywood from like tornadoes and things like that. Because, he was so poor, evidently. I mean, I don't know what's true, but I just took the tours and learned about him, while I was down there in Mississippi. And they said that he was so poor that a tornado had come through and all this plywood was just laying around. So he literally would like mechanically make these guitars, and he would make very odd stringed guitars. Sometimes it'd be 4 strings, or sometimes it might be 7, or sometimes it might be 13, like weird things.
Yeah, I've just heard that recently that he played a 7-string guitar a lot.
Yeah, that he made out of a tornado.
Amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing.
The other thing, you see him pictured with that Kalamazoo in one of the famous, when he's dressed up in the suit. Yeah. He's, but we've come to the conclusion that that's probably wasn't his guitar. That was probably a guitar that was in the photo studio. It probably wasn't his suit either.
Probably not.
But he went in there and made, because you see the other one in the little with the cigarette picture, and we don't really know what kind of guitar he's playing. So I'm sure he had.
Yeah.
He wasn't a rich guy, I don't think.
No, yeah. From what I understood, very super poor. That's why he had to build his own guitars and stuff like that. And he was just playing those juke joints, and just the white man was not a fan because he was getting all the women, kind of thing. That's what I heard too. So, but if you listen to those old recordings, those are so haunting still to this day. I mean, they're chilling. That's why I get cold chills.
There's another theory about the recordings that they're actually a little too fast.
Oh, really?
And there's a couple of guys out there that I've seen on YouTube and different places that have slowed the recordings down just to pitch, to 440 pitch or whatever. Yeah. And I think they sound a lot better, a lot more natural.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm gonna have to check that out.
Because it sounds very unnatural when you listen to some of those recordings. A lot of people are going to say, no, that's not what it was. But I mean, come on, you got to think
still
about
up for question.
What kind of equipment? It was fairly archaic equipment.
Yeah, no kidding.
So,
is it Alan Lomax, or who was the guy that came from California and actually got those tracks recorded? It's one of the Beatnik guys.
John Law? No, it wasn't John Law. It was something Law, I think.
Yeah, we'll look that up because there's somebody call in and tell us. We don't know. But it is somebody like an Alan Lomax character who is trying to get all this documentary stuff, and he ended up in Mississippi and ended up recording all of those tracks.
Now, one of the guy that you're thinking of, it might have been John Hammond Sr. or it might have been Lomax, but they wanted to bring him to Carnegie Hall to play for a thing called the Blues and Spirituals or some kind of a Carnegie Hall event, and he had passed away before.
Yeah, isn't that wild, man? And it took him 3 days to die.
Yeah.
He was poisoned.
They said he was crawling around like a dog on the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Creepy story, yeah.
Scary stuff.
And isn't that ironic, though, that, all of it goes back to Robert Johnson, and then, like you said, a lot of people don't know this, but basically the kids over in Europe were hearing these records somehow, and then they start doing that style of music, and then they get famous and come to America with it, and then all the kids in America are finally like, oh, this is amazing, where'd you come up with this music? And they're like, we got it from America.
Yeah.
And they didn't even know, because of what was going on here with slavery and what was going on here with civil rights and all that stuff. Americans were not privy to that music, so it took going overseas, them doing it and bringing it here, and basically that's how rock and roll was birthed, out of the blues.
Well, the Stones and I'll go ahead and say the Beatles too.
Yeah,
a lot. They turned America back on to its own music.
I know. It's ironic, isn't it? It's crazy how that works.
Them old Brits out, God love them.
Yeah,
man.
God love them. They're always coming in at the right time at the right place. So that's cool. I was heavily influenced by both of those artists. And usually if I have other musicians in the studio, especially drummers, I've noticed it always goes back to 2 things. Either the church, the gospel church, or it goes back to the Beatles. It seems like every drummer that's at least 60 or above was completely influenced by Ringo and the Beatles. I had a kid ask me about the Beatles the other day, and I said, you have to remember, kid, I was like, I know you can't fathom this, but the Beatles were like the first boy band. And not only the first boy band, they were playing stadiums for the first time. Like, they were the first band to play stadiums, and that was before stadiums even had sound systems.
They were playing through Shure Vocal Masters.
Yes.
PAs.
Yeah, and if you watch that live footage of when they come over and they play, I forget it, it's like Wrigley Field or somewhere.
You can't hear them.
You can't. The girls are screaming so loud that they are louder than their equipment, because they didn't have those sound systems back in the day.
It's why they quit touring.
Is it?
That was why the Beatles quit touring, because they couldn't be heard over all the little girls screaming.
I could see that.
And then the Stones in I think maybe '69 when they did the '69 tour, they decided to hang the PA to create a big stage, but also they're some of the first guys that actually did the big PAs for the big, the stadiums and the big
that's
halls.
Fascinating to me.
That was somebody on their team.
Yeah. Smart, and they're still touring.
Can you believe it?
I can't. It's hard, but I still teach Honky Tonk Woman to almost every kid that I have that's a drum student. They just love that cowbell song,
Charlie couldn't do the cowbell part.
I know.
Jimmy Miller or somebody had to
somebody
play the
did, because if you listen, there's hi-hat going on in there too underneath that cowbell, so you know that he didn't play that part if you know anything about tracking.
That's right. You're exactly right.
Yeah,
but what a part,
Yeah, brilliant. Yes, and if you're a drummer, it's kind of like a must know. So a lot of people, learn it without an extra person doing the cowbell, with the drummer just doing the cowbell part, which makes it even harder. I don't know if I told you, but I got to play with Bobby Keys before he died.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we played down in Nashville. I just happened to be in Nashville, right place, right time, and he had a lot of Louisville cats on his set. Paul Culligan was on drum set.
Well, they had the El Roostars band, Eric Horton, and Charlie Bach. And
Charlie Bach. I used to play in a band with Charlie Bach, and we had a rockabilly band together, and it was actually through Charlie that I got this gig, but I happened to be down there getting like a cymbal endorsement thing, and they were playing with Bobby Keys, and they said, hey, we need a percussion player because we're doing all these Stones tracks that have like conga and gyros, and they love to put percussion on everything.
Oh, yeah.
So I just showed up to play a few songs, and, that was right before he passed, so it was a pretty cool experience. One of the craziest green room experiences I've ever been a part of.
Well, Paul Culligan finally has a fond memory about that night, and he said they were backstage. I don't know, at some point during the show, and he said Bobby Keys got on the phone and called Keith Richards.
He did. I was standing right next to him.
You were there too?
Yeah, because I cold chills, because I'm like, oh my God, I'm standing right next to him. He's on the phone with Keith Richards.
He's talking to Keith.
Yeah. Jimmy Brown was in here too. Jimmy Brown's going to be my bass player for Louisville Pride this weekend. And he was telling me, the Stones used to come here all the time.
He sold him many guitars.
Yes, exactly. And they had him on like speed dial and would fly him to wherever to bring him a guitar. But he told this amazing story about them bringing him drugs down here in the 70s to the Hyatt. He said that he showed up and they just gave him a big bunch of drugs.
Whatever
and they were like,
hey,
we're going to be up for 3 days filming, so we just thought you might want this. And he was like, right after that is when he decided to go sober. But he told some amazing stories about selling guitars to Charlie Watts and all kinds of cool things.
He sold, he actually got a call from him, if I can remember the story right. He told me, he said that I believe it was for Keith's birthday.
Yeah.
Mick wanted to buy Keith the guitar that Robert Johnson's pictured with, the Kalamazoo.
Really? I didn't know
And they
that.
called him and they said, hey, we want a guitar like that. And he said, well, I actually have the exact guitar.
Yeah.
And I think they flew him somewhere to Chicago. I don't know.
Yeah.
But they went and they delivered the guitar.
I know. Isn't that
Keith's
cool?
birthday.
He also talked about like hanging out with David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And
oh, man.
Man, he had some crazy stories. I've had some amazing interviews up in the studio. It's pretty awesome to see where all the guys have come from and like all the stuff they've done in their career. Because there's a lot of history here in Louisville, Kentucky. And you were birthed here, right? So you've been around Louisville for a while. When did you decide to leave and go to New Orleans?
I was very intrigued with New Orleans for years before I ever went there. And the way that happened was, I don't know, maybe I was 18 or I don't even know. I can't even remember, 18 or 19 years old. And I went to an old music store called Music Warehouse that's no longer around. And there was a guy that's working in there. His name's Rusty Inns. Mm-hmm. He's still around. He's a musician around as well. And I was tinkling around on the piano, and he said, Mike, he said, that little thing you're playing in the bass, he said, that sounds like this guy I've been listening to. And I said, well, who's that? He said, his name's Professor Longhair. And I said, where's that? Who's that? Where's he from? He said, oh, it's New Orleans music. And he puts a disc on or something in a tape, and we're listening to it, and I went, wow.
Yeah.
I just went, wow, that's cool. That is what I'm doing, sort of, with my left hand, playing that little.
Yeah.
And so I got turned on to that. And he also had a recording of another piano player named James Booker, a very famous New Orleans piano player who they called the Bayou Maharaja, who's an incredible piano player, and a character of. He was an extreme character.
Yeah.
So he put the Booker on, and the Booker was quite a bit more technical than the Fess, and I said, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet.
Yeah.
So let's stick with this Professor Longhair guy.
Right.
So I got turned on to New Orleans music, and then I found out who Dr. John was.
Yeah.
Mac Rebenack, and
man, rest in peace, Dr. John.
yeah, we just lost him. And
I got cold chills again. I was like,
oh man, me too. I had the pleasure of knowing Mac a little bit.
Yeah.
I wasn't great friends with him or anything, but when I would see him around, we would chat. And
that's super rad.
He gave me some good little advice here and there.
Yeah, I've seen him live in concert like 4 or 5 times, and always loved him. He was still kind of underground, but people knew who he was. And he was on all of these major festival circuits. It seemed like.
Yeah, Mac. He was a bad son of a gun.
Yeah, he was. Yeah,
he was a bad dude, and
birthed right there in New Orleans too, right? He's a New Orleans cat.
He's a New Orleans tried and true. Yeah, Mac was. Alan Toussaint. We've just lost Alan.
Yep. We've lost a lot lately. I was going to also bring up the Eddie Money thing. We lost Eddie Money.
We sure did.
And we lost Rick Ocasek yesterday, man.
I heard it last night.
I got cold chills again. I'm like, is there spirits up in this place? What's up? Yeah, probably is. By the way, I don't know if you know anything about the where we're broadcasting live from, but we are in an old Guild Theater building. If you're not familiar with it, it was like an old palace back in the day.
Wow.
So everybody from Pink Floyd to the Grateful Dead to Allman Brothers to B.B. King have played in this building that we're broadcasting live from. I'll take you up and show you the old theater soon.
The building, man.
Yeah, it's super crazy. Yeah, I had Marvin Maxwell on the show.
Love him.
Of course. And of course he had vinyl that he recorded in this building that he brought in. He was with a band named Elysian Field in the 60s.
Was.
Okay, so Elysian Field used to play here and open for all these famous people in this building, and he was just baffled by the building. He was like, wow, I haven't been down here since the 60s, and super cool that y'all are broadcasting live out of this building. So he told me the history of it, showed me the back alley where all the bands would party, and said there's no telling how many drugs and kids were birthed back in that alleyway where the bands would load in. And the old theater upstairs is dilapidated and kind of very creepy.
I bet it is. We got to go up and look at it.
Yeah, we're going to go up and look up at it. Yeah. It's a really cool building to be in and broadcasting live at, though. Back in the 70s, I think it was a venue called the Mad Hatter. So there are lots of bands that have been in and out through this building. So pretty cool, huh?
Amazing, huh?
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, so anyway, we were talking about how we lost Rick Ocasek. I was a huge Cars fan. I don't know if you were at all, but they were like the weirdo band, in the 80s. They were them and the Talking Heads, I kind of grouped together in the same category almost. Rick Ocasek was this really tall dude, who always had these really hot chicks. And
very bizarre looking guy.
Very bizarre looking guy. And Jim Higdon, the guy who actually brought me the voodoo drumming record that's playing behind us, told me when he was working for Electric Records, I think it was, that Rick Ocasek and him would be on the elevator all the time together. And Jim is just as tall as Rick Ocasek. He said Jim is like 6'7" or something like that. And he said that they made buds because they'd be on the elevator and it'd be all these short people and then it'd be like those two together.
They were heads above everybody.
Literally heads above. I love that. Yeah. No, but there's been, man, they had hit after hit after hit. I was just looking at some of their work. I mean, if you look at that one record with the chick on the cover with the smile and it looks like she's driving a car. It's just her and a steering wheel, and it looks like a light-up steering wheel. It's a weird album cover. But on that one, I mean, there were so many hits off of that thing, from everything from Shake It Up to Magic, My Best Friend's Girl, Let the Good Times Roll, You Might Think, Just What I Needed. I mean,
It's so funny when you bring all those songs up again. I go, because I couldn't even hardly think of 2 car songs, but there's all of them right there almost.
Oh,
you know?
yeah, pretty much. Shake It Up. Yeah, I mean, there's so many. I think Let the Good Times Roll was like one of their biggest ones. But
I like that one.
Yeah, me too. We're going to spin some of their stuff here in a little bit. And then Eddie Money, man. I mean, from Take Me Home Tonight. Gosh, I can't even remember all the stuff he did either, but he's got a whole list as well.
Oh, yeah, he had a string.
Baby Hold On.
String of them, yeah.
2 Tickets to Paradise. Yeah, and then, of course, I got to work with Beverly McClellan. Her manager was actually also Eddie Money's manager at the time. So it was like there was some kind of weird crossover there.
There you go.
With those old rockers, which I'm a huge rock and roll fan, of course, and you probably too.
Oh, yeah.
If you love the blues, you probably love a little bit of that early rock and roll.
You can't have rock and roll without the blues. But,
I agree, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's so cool. So let's take a break and spin some cars and some Eddie Money as tribute, as well as we lost Dr. Dog. Who was the other one you just said? Because we've lost so many.
Dr. John.
Yeah,
and,
Dr. John. Yeah.
Alan Toussaint, Dave Bartholomew, who wrote all the Fats Domino's tunes.
Mm-hmm.
Hell, Dave Bartholomew was 100 years old.
Yeah. That's wild, isn't it?
Mac was in his 70s. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to kick it off with some Magic because I love that, but we'll do a back-to-back with one of your faves too.
Let's do it.
Yeah. I'm Jen Yates. You're locked on to LRS102.com with Mike Hood. It's the Cars and Magic. It's the Doors with Light My Fire. You're locked on to Jyneration Nation, LRS102.com. I am joined by the lovely Mike Hood. How you doing, Mike?
Fantastic, Jim.
Yeah, we had to play some Doors. You were talking about Light My Fire. So that song was pretty instrumental in getting your career started on piano and organ, right?
It's the one Bill Smalley showed me, and I went home and I learned it. And I thought it was pretty hard to play. So I thought, well, if I can play this,
yeah.
And he told me, he said, stick with it, man.
Was that on the Farfisa back in those days? Because, I was telling you about the 62 Farfisa, because I do know that the Doors specifically played a Farfisa.
I think it was a Vox Continental.
Is it? Okay.
That's what that is.
Okay, cool. It looks like in the videos that it's like, maybe live at some point they played one. So I've always been fascinated with Farfisas because of the weird organ-y sounds and the push buttons. And I don't know if I told you, but my grandmother was an organist.
Was she?
Yeah. I grew up in a very musical family in South Central Kentucky, mostly bluegrass, mostly white gospel based. But my dad was a lone rock and roller, so he put me on a kit when I was like 2. And he had already been touring around, the state since he was 10. And he was a big fan of, all the early Hendrix, all the early psychedelic rock and roll. So he put me on a kit, and that's kind of was my foundation. But my grandmother, very churchy, played the organ. We always had an organ. In fact, I own 3 organs, which is kind of crazy, right?
That's pretty cool.
They're just not in Louisville. They're still down at my dad's because, to move an organ.
Let's go get them.
We can if you want to. We can make a trip. It's an hour and 45 to get there.
Might have to do it.
Yeah, but he has a classic pump organ that's really gorgeous, and there's another one that I think you would find fascinating and probably know way more about than I do, but the bass is your feet pedals. There's feet pedals underneath the organ that
sounds like a Hammond.
Yeah, it probably kind of was. I don't know, but it's it's pretty cool. It's got all the knobs. It's got 2 rows of octaves.
Does it have those little you pull out the drawbars?
Yeah, it's got some of those too.
That's a Hammond, I imagine.
Yeah. So there's a pump organ, and then there's another more modern electronic organ that the feet pedals look exactly like the keys, but you have to move your feet to hit the bass notes.
Yeah.
While you're playing up here. So that always fascinated me because I'm like, what? I didn't know you had to do feet too.
Yeah, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, that's crazy, right? I didn't even know that they made such until, I just sat around and practice on those things.
That's the way they would play them in churches and things.
Mm-hmm.
With the bass, with the feet, and they could walk it around. Guys like Jimmy Smith and Jimmy McGriff, they would, I know Jimmy Smith would play I don't even think he had a bass player. He just played the pedals. Organ trio, guitar, drums, and organ, and you don't miss the bass.
Right, exactly.
You know.
I feel you on that. Well, we're talking all things New Orleans. I want to get back to that because, New Orleans is a very, very magical place to me. I've had some really great moments down there. The home of voodoo, the home of jazz. I mean, I know all kinds of friends who were displaced here when Katrina come through, and had to move up here. So that was a big to do. Have you been back recently?
Oh, I guess I've been back. The last time I was in New Orleans, maybe a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was touring. I was touring with a guy named Eric Lindell.
Yeah.
And we were going everywhere. I had moved back up here, but I was still touring with him. And so sometimes I would fly down to New Orleans, and we would do a little show on Frenchman Street at DBA, or maybe I'd just fly down there, and then we'd go out west or wherever we were going.
Yeah.
The last time I was there, I couldn't believe how filthy it was.
I know. It always is kind of filthy.
When you live there and you live in the filth for years, you just kind of, it's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And then after you come back to a beautiful town like ours, Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
It's clean. And then you go back down there and you go, oh God, this place is just, it's disgusting.
Yeah, I hear you.
But it's beautiful at the same time,
Yeah.
It has a lot
I think
of great
most
things
people
about
go there to kind of party and do their thing. There's also the huge Jazz Fest, which I love. I teach an older guy student who is a big Grateful Dead head. In fact, he gave me a copy of Live when the Grateful Dead was at Bellarmine in '68, I believe it was. Which is fascinating.
Yeah.
But he went to Tulane, and so he talks a lot about New Orleans to me, and he was telling me this story that he was down there when the Grateful Dead were, actually Fleetwood Mac was opening for the Grateful Dead, but it was Fleetwood Mac before we know him as Fleetwood Mac. It was the blues band.
Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac.
Right, Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, right.
Yeah.
So he said he had watched that show, and he said that night after the show, the Grateful Dead got busted.
On Bourbon Street.
Yes, on Bourbon Street.
Just like in trucking.
Exactly, yes. In fact, that's where they get the song lyrics. And so he was a college student. So the next day he said he was, I forget where he was coming back to, but he was hitchhiking. And he hitchhiked. And who picks him up? None other than Jared Garcia and his driver. No, he tells the story. He was like, you wouldn't believe it. He was like, Jared Garcia picked me up. And that was the day they had just gotten out of jail and bailed out their people. And he asked him, he said, I remember specifically asking him, will you guys ever tour through Bourbon Street again or through New Orleans? And he said, Jerry said, kid, I just don't know. I just don't know because they're not fans.
I don't think they ever played New Orleans again.
I don't think that they did. So, but that lyric that you say, busted down on Bourbon Street where they're talking about that literally happened, and he was there to experience it.
Set up like a bowling pin.
Set up like a bowling pin, that's right. So he must have been set up, or they must have felt like they were set up.
I think they might have even got sold fake drugs.
Could have.
Which happens all the time.
I'm sure. Yeah.
On Bourbon Street. That's a big...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when I went down there, everybody was like, avoid, what's the other street? What's the street where the gambling boats on, or like Harrah's and all that, the casino?
Canal Street.
Canal, yeah. They told me, as just a single female, first off, don't go in Canal late at night by yourself, and then told me that it was a huge pickpocket area for the city. So they were telling me, be wary when you're by yourself in certain locations in New Orleans,
I always kept, I never did keep a wallet, but I would put it around a rubber band and put it deep in my front pocket. Don't put anything in your back pocket.
Right, not down in New Orleans.
No,
I was always fascinated by the Maria Landreau story, the
Marie Laveau.
Laveau, yeah, I can never pronounce her name. Yeah, the voodoo queen, basically.
Marie Laveau was a very interesting character.
Yeah, what do you know about her?
Well, she was a hairdresser, and she was a free person of color. And Marie Laveau seemed to know everything about everybody's business, but she was a hairdresser.
I was going to say...
And that's how she knew.
Yeah, I was going to say hairdressers and florists, don't ever mess with them because they know everything that's going on.
They have the dirt on everybody.
Well, yeah, because everybody comes in and they sit and they always tell their hairdresser, they're always like, I've been sleeping with this one and that one and this one. And the florists are the same way. They know what cards you're sending to who. You know what I mean?
That's
and who's sending flowers to what and all this stuff. So they know all the dirt.
Well, that was the funny thing about Marie Laveau is... being a hairdresser, she got all the gossip, and she would hear things about other people through through the gossip. And
Right.
then when they would come in, she'd say, "Oh, she would lay something down on
Yeah.
them, and then, she'd say, "Oh, but I got something for you that'll take care of that."
Yeah.
So she
What
made
was it
money.
like?
She made money off her charms.
Yeah.
Her
Oh, is that
spells
what
and
it was? Charms.
charms.
I thought she was gonna like have bones and like sage or.
Oh, I'm sure she did. She probably had all that strangeness.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, this world, that
Hey,
world
I
that they
love to
live
go.
in is.
Yeah, I know. I love to go in those shops and like buy all the. It's they've just got the coolest little things that you can do. They're very new agey.
Oh, yeah.
Very mystic. I guess I love that stuff. In fact, I still on my fridge at home. I have a sticker that says "Voodoo unto others before they voodoo unto you," and it's New Orleans. I got it in New Orleans, so.
The funny thing about New Orleans is the stereotypes are real.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And people think, oh, that's just in the movies. Some of that is just movie crap, but some of it,
Some real
some
stuff.
of it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, I've seen some pretty crazy stuff down there in my day. In fact, the last time I was there, I ran into Lenny Kravitz.
Yeah, he hangs out.
Yeah, he's got a space like right there, and I hear Ani DeFranco's a big. She frequents. She's got one in the. Is it the Plant District or whatever that? What's that called? The Garden District. Yeah.
Very, very highfalutin.
Yeah, highfalutin bougie, as I call it.
Oh, you should see the houses.
Oh man,
Mansions.
Yeah,
Beautiful mansions.
but also the home of jazz. You know what I mean? And the jazz. What's it? The preservation
Hall.
Oh man, there was always people lined up down the street as far as you could see to get in that place.
Now, jazz, they say that got started in what they used to call the Storyville district.
Mm-hmm.
There was an alderman Storyville, and back in the late 1800s, they decided to legalize prostitution in the city of New Orleans, but only in one certain district. It was Canal, Basin Street, and then it went over to what was that? Claiborne Avenue, I believe. And the district was where all those houses were.
Makes sense.
And of course, they needed entertainment, so they had Jelly Roll Morton played piano and all kinds of piano players. Then you had your street musicians, and they would. The first one was called the Razzie Dazzy Jazzy Spasm Band.
I love that.
The
Great
Razzie
name.
Dazzy Spasm Band, or something like that. And somehow, the word jazz came
out of that. Like spazzy, razzy, jazzy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just but that's really just a label that people put on the music.
Yeah.
I don't know if I guess they came up with the name from that first little group.
Yeah.
I think there's even a photograph of them. It's a famous photograph. They
Yeah.
all have homemade instruments.
Yeah.
But that's
I love that stuff. Yeah.
that's pretty much where jazz was. What we call jazz was invented. They didn't call it jazz though. It was just music to
Yeah.
them guys. But it started.
Jazz
in the,
is an interesting style of music. It's just like blues. It's very historic. It's an American art form.
It's America's greatest gift to the rest of the world.
I agree. I
Jazz
totally
and
agree.
blues music.
We actually had Todd Hildreth was in here last week, and we were spinning a lot of jazz. And man, that dude is ridiculously good.
Todd Hildreth's a heavy cat.
Oh man.
What about when he plays the accordion? The
Yeah.
squeeze by
Oh
band?
yeah, we talked a lot about that and how he puts like banjos with accordions and like all these weird things that you would not assume with a kid toy drum set and he's got a lot of interesting projects.
And they're playing tunes you wouldn't expect to hear. With those
we
instruments.
talked about that. Yeah,
it's really neat. I've only seen it a few times, but it's always very.
I told him the
very
story
fun
of
to watch.
how I met Steve Cooley. Steve Cooley produced the first record that I ever did when I moved to Louisville. And I was like in my early 20s, so this was like 20-something years ago. But when I first met Steve Cooley, I met him in the basement of Baritones, which is now the Barrett Bar. And he was playing with Hog Operation, of course, on banjo. And they were playing Prince's Sexy Motherfucker.
Yeah.
I'm going to donate money to charity.
You might have to put $2 in this.
I will. But I was like, banjo with Prince? Like, you just didn't expect to hear that, but it caught my attention, and I remember it to this day. Isn't that funny how music is?
Sometimes you really it strikes you like that.
I know.
You'll never forget.
Yeah. I was going to tell you, we also had somebody in here. I think it was the Mama Said String Band, or it may have been the 10 Whiskey Sisters. They were in here, and they were talking about being on New Orleans, and they said that their most interesting moment was, everybody busk up and down
Oh yeah,
Bourbon Street.
big busking town.
Right. Well,
They actually like to do it on Royal Street.
yeah, Royal Street. Right.
In front of the grocery.
Yeah, I know
But all
exactly
up and
what you're talking
down
about.
because they block that street off during the day, and
Right.
it's just a pedestrian fair.
Yeah, exactly.
So everybody sets up in the street. Oh, they fight for those spots too. They'll get out there at
yeah.
3, 4
Is that
o'clock
in front
in
of
the
that
morning.
big? There's a big like monument of some sort that they're playing in front of, or a church there.
Well, that's Jackson Square.
Okay, Jackson Square is what I'm
And
thinking
that's
of.
the
Yeah.
St. Louis Cathedral, which is the oldest. I want to say it's the oldest
I think
cathedral
so. I think it is.
in
Yeah.
the United States.
Yeah, it's
That
a gorgeous cathedral. Yeah.
It's You
But I just
talk
remember
about a
out
neat
in front
place.
of there, like everybody kind of busking and all kinds of
Tarot
wild
card
stuff.
readers
Yeah.
and people
Yeah.
playing,
Yeah.
horns and trombone.
Yeah,
trombones,
so
brass instruments.
they were telling me that the most interesting thing they had ever seen was that it was a poet who was busking, and I said, "How does that work?" And they said she literally had an old school typewriter, and if you gave her money, she would write you,
She
a,
would write you a
poem
poem.
on a typewriter, read it to you, and give it to you to take home. And I was like,
Yeah.
that is the most interesting thing I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
There's another very interesting thing that
Mm-hmm.
people do for. It's not. I don't know if you would even call it busking, but I call them the standstill guys.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. Yeah. The
And-
ones who
or
paint
the-
their body?
the standstill
Yeah.
people. And they paint their bodies silver or gold or dress up like a cowboy or
And they'll
a
just
little
stand there.
ballerina or and there's another guy. What do they call him? Uncle Louie.
Yeah.
He dresses up like Uncle Sam.
Yeah.
But he has this little fake dog on a leash, and then he has a football under his arm, and he spreads his legs. How many degrees is? I mean,
I don't know. More than 90.
it doesn't look comfortable.
Yeah.
And this guy can stand
We'll
there.
say 120.
This,
Yeah.
I'll give it to you. I'll give it to him.
Right.
But this guy will stand there literally for an hour and a half,
Mm-hmm.
and he doesn't even blink.
I know, that blows my mind. They also had those in Chicago, which I think New Orleans actually invented that, but they have them in Chicago too, and they always freak me out anytime I'm around. I think I've even seen them in New York City.
They scare
But
kids.
They do scare kids, and especially when they're complete solid gold. And like you said, they just look like they're frozen. They don't even look human, and you don't even see them blink.
No, some of them are really good at it.
Yeah, they are. Yeah,
I don't know what they do to get that way, but
yeah.
I don't think it's nice.
You
But-
know, two styles of music outside of jazz that I learned about from New Orleans was Zydeco, obviously. I didn't know, I knew I'd always played a washboard because I love a washboard. And there's washboard in like bluegrass and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But when I went down to New Orleans and saw some of that Zydeco, that Cajun stuff, the rubbards, which are basically the washboards that they put over their body and scratch with spoons, or
Yep.
they'll have the banjo or the thimbles, on their fingers. I was obsessed with that stuff, and I love Zydeco music. I think it's fascinating, but I only ever see it down in New Orleans usually.
Well, strangely, Zydeco, you have Zydeco and you have Cajun music.
Right.
And they're similar but very different. And really, that music's not from New Orleans. A lot
Yeah.
of people think that it is.
Right.
But it's actually east and south of New Orleans when you get down into the bayous. And
Yeah, the swamplands.
They call it the Acadian Prairie or something.
Yeah.
The Cajun Prairie or something
Yeah.
like that. And that's Zydeco is actually the black version, the African American version. And Cajun is more the white.
I could see
It's
that.
kind of like blues and country.
Yeah.
One's a little bit more,
One way and the, yeah.
one's the other way. Zydeco is, a lot of that, the
Yeah,
one that they
the
wear.
rubbered. Yeah, they
with
call it
the-
a rubbered. I had to come home and research that.
A rub board, yeah.
Yeah, rub board or
the-
rubber,
washboard.
whatever. Yeah,
I think it's also called a fatwa
could be.
or something like
Yeah,
that. Might be the
fatwa.
French. or
I love that. Yeah, of course, it's very French down there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, these guys all came from, Canada. They got kicked out of Canada, and it
Rocked it out down there.
doesn't even make sense, but that's what they did.
Yeah.
So that's where you get the Cajun and the Zydeco music. The Zydeco has a little bit more blues in it, I
Yeah,
think.
I could see that.
It's a little. It's actually a little bit more fun. The Cajun music is a little bit more like bluegrass,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, very much. I could see that
they
for
use
sure.
a triangle.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
And
They
got
love a triangle, don't they?
They always have this special little beater that they use for the triangle.
Yeah.
And that's if they lose that, it's sad times.
Yeah, I
You
feel
just
you
don't
on
get
that.
another one of these
Yeah,
things.
I was gonna say very French market. One of my favorite places. Of course, I love the Cafe Du Monde coffee and the chicory roast stuff.
Yeah.
I love to eat down there and the beignets and
Beignets, the little
mm.
pounded donuts.
Yeah, those are so good. Yeah.
People love them. They
Yeah.
eat them up.
I know. The fish market is about as close as we can get here because the French, they've got the beignets that are very close, and I think they were influenced by the French market, obviously, and all the Cafe Du Monde and all that, stuff. Down
Yeah.
there. I love the food down there. I was also going to talk about also another style of music that I learned about while I was there is the second lines, the New Orleans second lines that will come through, and the drumming and the marching bands that just like crash things. And we took that idea. The Troubadours of Divine Bliss had asked me to create a Mighty Kind second line for their Mighty Kindness event, so I did in honor of the New Orleans second lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put a bunch of kids together and kind of taught them how to play, bass drum and snare drum, and we had a bunch of people with umbrellas and the napkins waving, and then they do the napkin tosses down there, which are really famous. But we would just show up to festivals and like crash it, and just all of a sudden there's a huge parade coming through with everybody just happy and dancing, and
Every day.
in honor of because if you've never seen one of those, you've got to get out of their way. You will get run over by bass drums and horns and everything else
Hey,
going on.
Pocky Way, get out of the way. Hey, Pocky
And-
Way, get out of the way.
Yeah, and another thing was the bicyclists down there are no joke. They don't play. They have like bicycle nights where they ride like on Thursday nights
That's
or something
right.
like that. And if you don't get out of their way, you will be run over. Like they do not play.
No, we're coming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's crazy to look up and then be like, oh, there's like 1,000 bicyclists just rolling down the street, not even caring if you're in their way. They're going to run you over.
The cool thing about the second line is sometimes you'll be in the French Quarter and they'll be having a second line for somebody's wedding or somebody's funeral, or it could be just a party or anything. And sometimes you'll be just walking and you'll get the spirit of it, and then you just start following. You don't even know.
Oh, I know,
You
yeah.
just start following.
Then you're lost. You have
and you're
no idea.
dancing and you're dancing down the street. I remember one time we crashed the St. Patrick's Day second line, and we were walking. Me and a couple of friends were walking behind a float, and we kept getting beads off of the float, making them give us arms full of beads, and we're throwing out green beads and giving girls kisses,
Oh,
and
yeah.
hugs, and they thought we just crashed the parade. We were part of it.
Right, that's
Until
amazing.
they said, you're taking all our beads. We're like, all right, we're out. We were half loaded anyway. So much
I love
fun.
that. Hi, man in the window.
Yeah, man in the window. Hey, can I get $1?
I think he's the same dude that cussed me out this weekend in the Highlands. I'm not lying. I was walking down the street and some guy who was very mentally ill threw something at me, and I was like, sir, that's not nice. And he literally like reamed me a new one.
Oh, man.
I swear that's the same dude.
He's found
Anyway.
you, Jen.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, is he following me? What in the world's going on?
Yeah, well.
Anyway, we're talking to Mike Hood, and we're talking all things music. So, Mike, what have you got going on right now? Because I know you play in all kinds of different groups, and you do all kinds of cool things.
Oh, man. There's so many great people to play with here.
I know. Louisville's full of talent.
Let's see what we're doing here. Let's see. I'm doing. We just played at the Melwood Tavern this past Saturday. That's
Oh, I love that place.
Yeah, Scotty and Patrick and everybody over at the Melwood, all the bartenders and staff, love them to death.
That's kind of turned into like the hippie bar. It's like it's the new place for all the Grateful Dead heads. You know what I mean?
And it's the place for it. It's a big music venue.
Yeah.
It's not a go in there, and
Right.
it's very for the music.
Yeah.
And so every Sunday, they have an event that Will Husband and Scott and those guys put on. It's called the Early Service.
Yeah.
So every Sunday they have a new band. It might be somebody coming through town. It might be. Yesterday they had some kids from Asheville that were it was just amazing.
Wow.
But every week it's somebody different, some local, some out of town. So you never really know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But it's always great. And it always starts around 5:30 every Sunday.
Mm-hmm. That's Melwood Tavern.
Melwood Tavern, it's outside.
Right.
And
Oh, yeah, out
they
back
have the
there?
Stage. Yeah, everybody hangs out outside.
That is at the
Has a great
corner of, is it Brownsboro Road and
Brownsboro,
Melwood?
Melwood Avenue.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, so if you're interested in that, that's Sundays at 5 p.m.
It starts around 5 or 5:30.
Cool.
And then right after the early service is done, the Merry Pranksters start, and they play till I don't even know till
they're done.
Till
basically.
they,
That's
till they
kind of
don't
how
wanna
the
play
Merry
anymore.
Pranksters roll. Oh man, I remember when I first moved to Louisville, it was '99, and I got turned on to the Merry Pranksters. Obviously, I was in the Highlands, and back then I can't remember, they were at Girl Stools all the time, and there used to be, not before Time and Space, there was another venue that they frequented, all the time, and it was just like the Grateful Dead bar band,
Oh yeah.
and maybe the old tap room. Which, by the way, Louisville always cracks me up with the names here, because I'm like, okay, we have like 4 tap rooms now. Which one is which? Nobody knows. When they say to meet you at the tap room, you don't know which tap room they're talking about unless they're very specific.
There you go.
But back in the day, the tap room used to be all the Grateful Dead heads, and the Merry Pranksters played there all the time. In fact, we're going to have Tom Browning on the show on Monday, so you want to stay tuned. And
Fantastic man and
listen to
guitar
him.
player. Him and the whole band's great.
Yeah, and great fun dudes too. I remember seeing them at Girl Stools and just being like, I love this band. Of course, I was always a Deadhead, so it made sense that I loved them.
The pranksters like to prank.
Yes, they do. Yeah. So do you ever get to set in with those guys or jam out or?
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
have.
I bet.
I have a few times.
Yeah.
RD and Bob Ramsey's a dear friend of mine.
Oh, I love Bob Ramsey.
we just shared a couple of stories last night.
Oh yeah, what about? Are they
Well, we were,
radio friendly?
oh yeah. Well, we got to talking. Bob had seen a photograph that I posted with I just played a song with Alan Toussaint.
Mm-hmm.
He got up and sat in with Glenn David Andrews' band. We were playing. This is about 9-10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And Glenn David Andrews, that's Trombone Shorty's cousin.
Okay.
So we're playing with him, and all of a sudden, Glenn David says, "We're going to get up a very special guest, Mr. Alan Toussaint." And I'm going, "You got to be kidding me!"
Mm-hmm.
So here comes Alan Toussaint walking up on the stage. He sits down and he plays. So anyway, me and Bob, I had a photograph of that somebody took of the end of the song. We're actually shaking hands. He's standing up and he's offering me his hand.
Cool.
And we're both smiling because it was actually really good what we did. It was
Heck
the best
yeah.
thing we did all day. It was the last thing, too.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'm telling Bob about that, and I said, well, he said, Mike, that's something else. That dude's legendary. I said, well, Bob, I said, you toured with Leon Russell.
Yeah, exactly.
He goes, yeah. He goes, you know what's really funny about Leon? He goes, is what he listened to on the bus. He said Leon would listen to Southern gospel music and all this, old time vocal music. He didn't listen to anything like you think he would.
Yeah.
And I said, that's strange. I said, in New Orleans, I ran into, I met Jerry Jeff Walker in New Orleans one night at a bar, and he invited me and another friend of mine, Pete the Foot, a drummer. He invited us back over to his house in the French Quarter.
Yeah.
We went to his house, and the first thing, Jerry Jeff Walker, country artist, the first thing he does is he puts on a Bill Evans CD. And he goes, Bill Evans piano, and we're talking jazz.
Yeah.
And he says, man, y'all listen, ain't that beautiful? And I'm thinking, this guy's a jazzer?
Yeah.
That's the last thing you would have thought.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me. I love
people
to find out
listen
what
to,
artists listen to, because it's always across the board. You know what I mean?
You never know. Usually it's the complete opposite of what you think they would be listening to.
Exactly. I know. That's what's so fascinating to me. So
Bizarre.
what's the craziest story you have about, any celebrity that you've met? Because I know you've met a lot over your playing years. Do you have any kind of crazy that'd be fun to tell?
I'll tell you a good one. This is pretty funny.
I love this question.
I used to work in the oldest continuously operating bar in America. It's called Lafitte's Blacksmith Shop.
My favorite bar of all time. I love that bar.
It's a creepy old haunted
dark
place.
And it's like candle lit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that place.
And it's very, very haunted. I don't care if you believe it or not, it's real.
Oh, I know it's haunted. You can feel it as soon as you walk in.
You
You
can
know what I
feel
mean?
it. So anyway, I was in there playing one night, and a beautiful lady walks in with her parents. And they sit down, and she sits beside me, and I'm playing, and I start to talk to her. I knew she was a star. I didn't know who she was. We're talking, and we're kind of flirting, smiling, and I asked her mom, I said, does she have a boyfriend? She said, no, and we really want some grandchildren. And I smiled. I went, oh, yeah. And I'm looking at, we're just having fun. So anyway, I play and play and play, and we flirt and have fun, and I still don't know who this person is, who this woman is. And I'll get done playing, or I didn't get done playing, but they finally left after an hour or so. And my friend Jen Staggs was sitting there, and she said, Mike, you could have taken her home. And I went, oh, well. She goes, do you know who that was? I said, no. She goes, that was Kirsten Dunst.
Really?
It was Kirsten Dunst.
I love that.
She gave me a kiss. She was a sweetheart.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Kirsten Dunst is pretty awesome.
She was pretty fine.
I got a funny story if you want to hear it.
That's a funny story.
I almost got attacked by Tiffany, the pop star, the 80s pop star.
Tiffany, I think you might take her, Jen.
She's down in Nashville, and I had to do this show once to, I can't remember what it was, but we were on the same bill together, and she was just going to do 3 songs for, like, with tracks or something, right? Because a lot of these pop stars, they don't hire a band, they just get up with some tracks and do their song over their tracks.
You're lucky if they're even really singing. But.
Yeah, exactly. Well, she was actually singing, but it was to tracks, and then she saw my drum setup, and she was like, hey, do you have a tambourine that I can use? I'm like, yeah, I got a tambourine up there, and she's singing. We actually were going on later than her. She had to do an early show there for some reason, so we were going to go on after her. And I was in this like punk rock chick angst 90s band kind of thing. And the lead singer, like while Tiffany was singing, she's just staring at me the whole time out of all these people in the room. And my lead singer was like, dude, do y'all like know each other or something? I'm like, no, I don't know her. I had her cassette tapes when I was a kid. I don't know. I know who she is. And by this time, she was like, very gorgeous and very voluptuous, and her boobs were hanging out. And
you liked it.
I totally did. And she was all like just singing to me. And then afterwards, she tried to like corner me and take me back in her green room and was pressuring me to do bourbon shots with her. So I did. I'm like, when a hot chick asks you to do bourbon shots with you, you just kind of do it.
Yeah.
But she was all up on and very like in my personal space, and I was just very confused about all of that.
What did you do?
I didn't really do anything, but I was like very tempted to. You know what I mean? But at the same time, they were like, her husband's outside, and I was like, I don't know what they were into, but all I know is it was very exciting that Tiffany, somebody I grew up with a cassette tape to, was trying to corner me doing bourbon shots in the back green room.
Oh, man, who else? Let's see. Hugh Laurie. Hugh Laurie came in one night. My friend Grace, who worked for the Department of Tourism down there, gave me a call one afternoon. And she said, Mike, I'm going to send Hugh Laurie down to the bar to see you. He's a really good piano player. I said, Hugh Laurie? I said, yeah. Dr. House? Hugh Laurie, the actor? She said, yeah. I said, I've always wanted to meet that guy.
Yeah.
I said, I can't wait. He came in and he didn't actually sit at the piano, but he came in and I saw him. He had just had a baseball cap. He was incognito. He goes to the bar. At the end of the night, I go up and he's still there talking to Josh, the bartender.
Yeah.
And I said, hey. And he goes, hey, that was you playing the piano? I said, yeah. I said, man, nice to meet you. I said, Grace sent you down. Yeah. And I said, well, I'm Mike. Oh, yeah, I'm Hugh Laurie. He's English, so he's talking with an English accent. And it just threw me for a loop. I said, man, I don't know how you do that English thing and all this. And we talked. I said, Hugh, why didn't you come back and sit in? He goes, oh, he said, I wasn't going to play after you. And I just said, I said, man, I'm not that good, brother.
That's awesome.
He's a great piano player, but he was really kind.
Dude, that's a huge compliment, I would think. You know what I mean?
It was. He told me. He said, man. He said, I only met Dr. John once, but I have a picture of us behind my piano at the house. I said, yeah. I said, what'd Mac tell you? He said, well, he was kind of scary. I was a little scared of him.
Yeah.
I said, well, Mac can be like that a little bit. He's a little intimidating.
Yeah. There's some people I've met, it's super intimidating. Like Chris Robinson, he's like really tall, and he had like 2 chicks on his arm with a big old pimp hat and a feather.
I bet he did.
He seemed very intimidating to me. I don't know why. Not that I was scared of him intimidation, like musician-wise. It's just that he was so big and tall compared to my 5'4"-ness. You know what I mean? Oh, yeah.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah. So, Mike, you brought us some stuff to spin, right?
Well,
yeah.
I was thinking maybe we could spin some Rolling Stones.
Oh, heck yeah, we can absolutely spin some stones.
Can we listen to All Down the Line off of Exile on Main Street?
Let me see if we can find it. We can definitely throw that down. What else you got? Let's just throw in, let me find something I've got here. All Down the Line, is that on this one?
Something off Goat's Head Soup, maybe? Silver
how about,
Train.
well, I've got Angie.
No, let's don't do that one.
Yeah, it's too played out. What about something off of 40 Licks?
Yeah. Well, what about, you know what? Give Me Shelter, darling.
Oh, yeah, you can't go wrong with that one, ever.
My favorite.
Yeah, Give Me Shelter is a great track. It's the Rolling Stones. You're locked on to LRS102.com. Stay tuned. I'm joined by Mike Hood in the Walrus Studios. That's the Rolling Stones with All Down the Line. I'm Jen Yates. You're locked on to Generation Nation WLRS 102.com, or actually LRS102.com. Did you know the Walrus got its name from WLRS? It looks like the Walrus.
I've always wondered where the Walrus, how that fell into play.
Yeah, that's exactly how it came, because I thought, I had no idea why they named it that. I just thought it was the coolest name ever. By the way, I got sound effects the other night, walrus sound effects, and they are hilarious. Have you ever heard a walrus make noises?
Yeah,
they're very
it's very obnoxious.
Very. Here's one.
I don't know if that's obnoxious or not, but
right,
almost sounds like a bong hit.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? It sounded just like a bong hit. It's actually a walrus doing some sort of like clappy, whistly thing. I don't know. They make some very odd noises.
It probably has something to do with mating season.
Probably. Yes. In fact, that's why most of the males make some very interesting noises, and that's how they mate. The female gets to pick out which mating sound she likes the best, and that's how walruses hook up. I learned that from researching walrus sound effects. Anyway, we were just listening to Exile on Main Street off of the actual record. I wanted to tell everybody this because I just blew Mike's mind.
This is awesome.
Yeah, so when I was touring with Beverly McClellan, she ended up giving me some records from her vinyl collection because she knew I collected vinyl, and she gave me, I don't know how she got her hands on them, but she gave me some Wolfman Jack's vinyl collection from his radio days. And it says on there, for promotional use only, do not sell. It's only for the radio station. And then there's these cool little stickers on the back that tell the tracks.
Yeah.
And Exile on Main Street from the Rolling Stones was one of them that I got my hands on. So that's the track you just heard, All Down the Line, which we were laughing about. We heard that the lyrics were about a bordello and the chicks lining up.
Yeah, if you go all down the line, well...
Yeah,
it's the line of all the girls.
Right, exactly. So, yeah, and if you listen to the lyrics of that, it kind of makes sense now.
Yeah, won't you be my little baby for a while?
Yeah. You know, one of my... right. You know, one of my favorite things ever? A story that Bobby Keys told me, who is the saxophone player for the Rolling Stones, which at one point he got kicked out because they said he was he was a bad influence on Keith, right?
Well, the story I heard about Bobby Keys is he got kicked off the tour because he decided he wanted to take a bath with a little French girl, but the bath was Dom Perignon champagne.
Oh.
So he ordered, I don't know how many cases of Dom Perignon it takes to fill up a bathtub. But,
quite a few, I would think.
But I heard he got, and then they told him to come on. They said, "Come on, Bobby, it's time to go." And he just said, "Screw you guys, I'm doing this."
Yeah, and go on with your tour.
Yeah, and so he got kicked off the tour, and he didn't make any money because he spent all his pay. And I think he actually owed him. He owed him money. I think
probably.
I don't know if that's true or not. Chart Kinsolving would probably know that. He played with Bobby in the Suffering Bastards.
Yeah, that's a great band.
Nashville.
Yeah, one of the stories Bobby told me, and I think he told the whole band, was in the green room. He talked about "Can You Hear Me Knocking," which is one of my all-time favorite tracks because of the conga and the percussion stuff going on in there.
Great track.
Right, and he talked about. And by the way, if you don't know who Bobby Keys is, you should. He toured with the Rolling Stones, and he is on Brown Sugar, and he's a famous sax player. He literally toured with John Lennon and is on Whatever Gets You Through the Night.
Yeah, he recorded with John. He
Mad
was
Dogs and Englishmen, Joe Cocker.
Delaney
he's all
and
over
Bonnie.
Yeah.
Actually, my friend, Jerry Jumonville, who's a famous session saxophone player down in New Orleans, who played on many things. Tonight's the Night. He's the saxophone.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's bad.
Pretty much every amazing saxophone solo.
But he told me that him and this other friend of mine named Larry Savoy, trombone player, he said they got the gig playing with Delaney and Bonnie because the Stones stole Jim Price and Bobby Keys from Delaney and Bonnie's band.
That's
so they got the job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, he told this story one night.
He toured with Joe Cocker,
he's all over the Letter. Yeah, he's all over.
Englishman.
Yeah, Mad Dogs and Englishmen. Anyway, he
Return to Sender.
Oh, is that him?
He's on Return to Sender.
I did not know that. Well, I know he's with everybody. It's crazy. Every major song that's old school that has a brilliant sax solo is probably Bobby Keys.
It's funny, Charlie Watts says it best. He says, Bobby Keys wasn't the best saxophone player, but he was the best rock and roll saxophone player.
I bet. Yeah,
So,
I love that. Yeah.
I like that too.
So he tells the story about how he was passed out in the corner, and he was drunk, and they were in the studio, and they were working on the "Can You Hear Me Knocking" track. And he said he woke up out of a drunken stupor, and everybody was laying tracks, and he grabs his saxophone he grabs his saxophone, and he runs to the other side of the room, and he tells them to give him a track. And the track that he laid down out of that drunken stupor is the one that actually made the song. So when you go and listen to "Can You Hear Me Knocking" today and listen to that amazing saxophone solo, just imagine him coming out of a drunken stupor, grabbing his sax and like running across the room and laying down that track.
Well, like you said, every night's a Saturday night.
Exactly. Yeah, we love the Stones here, and I mean, when they came out, I educate my students on this all the time. They were the anti-Beatles. That's really what they were going for.
Yeah.
The Beatles were kind of like the pop boy band, the PC version. That they looked cute and they played like pop songs that everybody loved. Well, the Stones wanted to be the complete opposite. They wanted to be the dark. What's the one about the Majesty, the record, the
Satanic Majesty's Request.
Yes, Satanic Majesty's Request. That was their album that they put out in competition with Sgt. Pepper's.
Right, you got it.
Yeah.
And they were talking, I think it also had something to do with the Queen, and they didn't, they were anti-establishment.
European, right, anti-establishment, right. And of course, they were really going for the opposite look from the Beatles.
Oh, man, weren't
and
they?
Putting out tracks like Sympathy for the Devil, you know what I mean? And and look how many tracks they got out of it, and they're still rocking to this day. And everything we hear, they really have their own sound. I love to hear Keith, and I've read his bio, his autobiography about how
Life.
he detunes weird to weird
Open
keys.
G,
he loves all that stuff. Yeah. Super cool band, though. Yeah, I love that you were influenced by them. Let's talk a little bit about the Louisville music scene, because we were just off record talking about how awesome the scene is and how overlooked the scene is, because there's so many amazing players in the city. And we were talking about, if you go back to that 80s, 90s rock and roll scene, I mean, we had so many bands coming out of here that really got a name for themselves. For Slint is still respected to this day.
My Morning Jacket.
Jim James, obviously.
And then you go way back, and you've got NRBQ.
Wilson Pickett,
Lionel Hampton was from here.
By the way, I have a Lionel Hampton a book in my car that somebody gave me. We spun some Lionel Hampton the other day on the show, and a lot of people don't know that he was from Louisville, before he went to L.A.
I don't know if he grew up here, really, but it's hard to say.
He has a connection to here, and it's going to talk about it in the book that I have, but it's just called Hamp, the book. It's H-A-M-P.
Yeah.
And it's got him standing on the front with his vibe mallets, and we had some vintage vinyl jazz stuff in here the other day where he's like, and he wasn't, you would have loved this, he wasn't playing vibes on this one, he literally was playing piano. And his runs, I'll have to find out what track that was, but his runs on piano were, it sounded like the Flight of the Bumblebee, but even crazier. It was just runs up and down the piano, and
we're gonna have to find that.
I'll find it. It's actually on. It's in the archives on the Jim Higdon. He's the one who brought it in and introduced me to it, and I was blown away when I heard it.
Oh,
so
man.
yeah, super cool. A lot of people don't know he did have a Louisville connection before he went out to L.A. So he's known as the vibraphone master.
I don't think anybody ever top that guy. He's like the Charlie Parker of the vibraphone.
Exactly, the vibraphone. So we had all these amazing cats coming out of here, from Tim Krekel even. Tim Krekel went on to tour with the Coral Reefers and
he wrote
Jimmy Buffett.
I'm not sure of the exact songs that he had something to do with, but
I think it was he went to Paris or Son of a Sailor.
He had something to do with a lot of those tunes, or some of them anyway.
Yeah, and of course, one of my
musician.
favorites is his song that he wrote about Wilson Pickett being buried in his backyard, because he was from Louisville and he literally was, So we've had some amazing
Crazy.
groups come out of here. Not only that, but Love Jones too. I just had those cats in.
Oh, yeah.
You know, they were just on Jimmy Fallon
Sure.
representing Louisville, Kentucky.
That was great.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
It was great to see them all on there.
They're also
Bob
on the
Ramsey and all of them.
Yeah, man. Bob
Maurice and-
Ramsey's been in, man. He's telling some great stories. I mean, there's been so many great musicians in this studio talking about what they do. And one thing I do love about Louisville, I feel like it gets overlooked, but we have every style of music here that you could ever want. You know, you can go any night of the week down to Stevie Ray's and hear some great blues. You can go anywhere and hear some great jazz on a random night. You can go up to the tap room and hear metal.
Yeah.
You know, we have a great original band scene here.
That's the beautiful thing about our town. There's no, it doesn't have any musical identity, so to say.
Right.
Whereas, you know, somewhere like New Orleans is great. The music is great, but it's
Specific.
it's what it is. And,
Right.
and there's not much. They don't give anybody much room to do much of anything
Right.
else. You know, you don't play if you don't play what they play.
Exactly,
you know?
exactly, right. It's like where I grew up. If you didn't play country, good luck, you know, or Southern rock.
Sure.
You know.
So that's very liberating about Louisville. You can do what you want to for real here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, shoot, I'm writing songs about Jesus freaks.
Hey,
Pop,
yeah.
hip hop, punk.
Let's do it.
Yeah. Well, I've got this solo record coming out that's got like 25 songs on it, and basically what it's all about is it's like punk, because I grew up in the era of punk. I loved punk because you could say anything you wanted to, and it was kind of like kick over the garbage can and fuck off, you know?
Totally
like, that's what I loved.
Yeah.
Anti-establishment, I always loved that. And then, of course, I was in love with all the 90s, like female angst, you know, Tracy Bonham screaming at her mother that she's going to smoke cigarettes and wear short dresses. And, you know, and Alanis Morissette was like, you ought to know.
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
you're
yeah.
going down on her in a theater and all this stuff. Like she literally, yeah. I loved all that angst chick, like raw, you know. And then of course, loved Joan Jett. She didn't give a damn about her bad reputation, you know, and was writing songs about hating herself for loving people, you know, and all this stuff. And then, of course, hip hop comes in the forefront. So I had the first like Grandmaster Flash record. I had Debrat and you know, Queen Latifah when she was putting out records back in the day, and of course Salt and Pepper came along, and I really loved that hip hop style because of the rhythms behind it.
Yeah,
because really hip hop is all about the drums and the vocal.
Yeah.
That's it. So I feel like the new record that I'm about to put out is like a clash of punk, chick angst, and hip hop. It's got a little bit of those three influences. And of course, I've always been a rock and roller at heart. So, but I decided to go completely because I'd done blues records and I'd done, you know, funk and blues and jazz and country and, you know, all these different styles of music over my day, especially tons of rock and roll. I was like, I have not done a lot of electronic hip hop. So that's
you
where
were
I'm
ready
headed.
to take it in another direction.
I was, yeah.
And thank God the city can
Is
embrace
open to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, by the way, we
It's the
do
best
have an
thing.
awesome little hip hop, you know, scene here too.
I don't know anything about it, but I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at groups like, you know, the a cappella group, Lincoln Bridge.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
man, they're an amazing group. And we also have amazing groups of tribute bands here, which blow my mind, you know.
From Paris, Eric Horton and Bob.
Exactly. You've got the Back to Mac
those
tribute.
guys.
You've
Yeah,
got
that's those
Steely
guys.
Danish. You've got I Heart Heart. All those groups that are doing that thing. I hear there's a new NXS tribute band here.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah, and I've always wanted to put together a Runaways tribute.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There you
I think
go.
that'd be cool. Like the odd
should
chick.
do that.
I know I need to do that. Don't I?
need to do that.
Yeah, and do Cherry Bomb and like all those old school songs, and then you could do the Lita Ford stuff or the Joan Jett stuff. You know, get those characters to come out on stage.
I'll tell you some of my favorite bands around here. One of the best younger bands around here right now, a band called Electric Garden.
I
Oh
don't
man,
know them, but I'd
go
like
see
to.
them. They did a Waterfront Wednesday, packed it.
Really?
They've been doing a lot of stuff. Great band, Electric Garden.
Cool. I'm gonna have to be turned on to those cats.
You'll
because,
love them. They did a Madonna cover.
Oh, yeah.
The last.
Oh,
which
yeah.
is really far off from what they do.
Hey,
Very
dude,
original.
I say this all the time on my show. Most people remember where they were when, like, you know, Kennedy was shot or the Challenger blew up. I know exactly where I was when Madonna crawled across the stage in the wedding dress. I mean,
I remember
that was a big to do, and I say this often about my own music career as an artist. I'm like, you know what? If Madonna can burn crosses and wear cone bras and kiss a black man on TV, then I can do whatever I want to. You know what I mean? Because Madonna was really, even though we all know that she couldn't really sing when she came out. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things about Madonna you can hate or love, but she was really pushing the buttons of people when it came to, when she put out Papa Don't Preach, man.
She was pushing some serious buttons.
Yeah, that Papa Don't Preach was about abortion. I don't know if you remember that, but that was the first time that it had ever been really talked about in a music video or on television. And then she did a couple movies, and then they said to her, "You will destroy your career if you light crosses on firing as a black man on TV." And she said, "You know what? I don't agree with you." And she did it anyway. And then it was like boom, skyrocket with Like a Prayer. Then we get Vogue. Then we get Express Yourself. Then we get all the crazy erotica Madonna. I mean, who puts out a book with pictures of all the people they've slept with? You know what I'm saying?
Apparently Madonna does.
Yeah. Can you imagine, though, as an artist doing that?
I couldn't imagine doing it.
I couldn't
I'm
either.
not pretty like that.
Well, I'm just saying, if you were a female, though, could you imagine? I cannot imagine going, "Hey, guess what? Everybody I've slept with, your picture's about to be in this book. Sue me." You know what I mean? Like, that's ballsy, right?
Yeah, I'll say.
Yeah, very. So anyway, we can say what you want about Madonna, but she was a big influence in my career and kind of gave me the guts to do anything or say anything I wanted to.
Empowered you.
Yeah, empowered me. And not only her, but like a lot of the early Joan Jett, a lot of the early rock and rollers in music. Yeah. I loved them all.
Good stuff.
Yeah. And he goes back to, by the way, I don't know, I educate people on Viola Smith all the time. She's 107, will be in November.
I don't know, educate me.
She is one of the first female drummers that we ever saw on television. Yeah, she drummed for Frank Sinatra back in the day when you were not supposed to be doing that as a female. And, she was kind of like a pioneer in the women's music scene, especially with drums.
They had a lot of great all-female bands back then that don't get a lot of recognition, but they're starting to now. Yeah,
you talking about in the 70s?
Oh, I'm talking about
even back earlier?
Probably 40s.
Oh, yeah.
40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I was a huge fan of Motown, and I love all of those like Motown female bands, like the chick bands that had the doo-woppers, and they
I'm talking about like these girls were serious musicians.
Oh yeah,
jazz. They had big bands, and they were playing serious piano players too.
Yeah, with orchestras behind them.
Yeah, big horns, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. I love just great players in general, or anybody who pushes the button on topics or did their thing back in the day. We had the drummer from Fanny on here called in. Now, Fanny was a band in the 70s. They're considered the first all-female rock and roll band that was ever signed to a major label. And they were very Native American-y, so it was very controversial at the time. But now they're releasing their stuff on YouTube, and you can go watch them. And you talk about great players. Those girls had some major chops, and they influenced a lot of like rock bands after them. Alice DeBurr, the drummer, went on to work for, I think it was Capitol Records, and she helped sign the Go-Go's and helped sign the Bangles, and helped a lot of those early female rock and roll bands get their start, or pop bands, whatever you want to call them at the time. But yeah.
And what about Nina Simone?
Oh, I love Nina Simone.
Now, you want to talk about somebody who did what they wanted to do?
Yeah, exactly.
And gave zero.
Zero F's. Yeah. Fucks. We'll donate money to charity.
If I had a few dollars on me to put in there,
I'll donate it for you.
I might say a few more bad things. But.
You know who I was watching videos of the other night is Grace Jones.
Oh,
she's another one that's just like, whoa, where did she come from? She was like an alien at the time that she came out.
She's like the female David Bowie or something.
I heard that he kind of helped her get discovered too. So I think she had a lot of influence from David Bowie.
Yeah, I don't really know what her deal was. Was she a fashion model? And
I don't know, but I do know that she waited.
She's like Kim Kardashian of the
right of
70s
that world.
or whatever.
Right, yeah, man. And she had that weird alienistic look. She looked like she was straight out of Mad Max kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's one of those like, whoa.
What's going on? She's kind of scary.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to tell you, talking about, remember when we were talking about, Bobby Keys being on the phone with Keith Richards, and I was in the room.
Yeah.
Another time I was in the room for a phone call was I got hired to play this show called Girlfriend at Actors Theater, and my bass player was Sarah Lee of the B-52s. Now, she had actually got her start with Gang of Four. She was from London, or Europe, and she had started with Gang of Four, toured with the Thompson Twins, and then ended up in America. Last I talked to her, she was on tour with Robert Fripp. You know, she'd done some amazing things. But her most famous was probably the B-52. She's the bass player on Love Shack. She's all over Cosmic Thing. All of their hits, that's Sarah Lee on bass. She was my bass player here for like 3 months, so I got to spend a lot of time with her and hear her stories. And she was gay, and her lover at one point was Gail Ann Dorsey. So she would call Gail Ann Dorsey on the phone. Now, Gail Ann Dorsey was David Bowie's bass player. So for his entire career. So if you ever look at David Bowie, you know, and videos and stuff like that, he had an African-American chick, bald, who was Gail Ann Dorsey, who was his bass player. And she used to call her all the time, and I'd be like, oh my God. Yeah. Like, she's on the phone with David Bowie's bass player.
I have another one along the same line. A saxophone player that played with the Stooges on Funhouse. His name was Steve McKay. He's passed away, but somehow he ended up over at my house. Mm-hmm. We were in New Orleans, and he ended up staying with us for about a week. And I walk out, and he's on the phone with Iggy.
Yeah.
And I can hear him talk. He's talking to Iggy. I said, tell Iggy. I
tell you what, Iggy's one that I would love to meet. You know, he's just he's another icon. He's one of those, like, you know, early formations of punk. I was big into the Stooges. I was always big into like Black Flag and Dead Kennedys and, you know, the Ramones. I loved that whole punk movement and that all those kind of bands that kind of like clashed in there. And then my favorite really is when rock and roll went into like new wave era, you know, that weird In Excess meets The Cure and the Cult and like.
Oh, I loved In Excess. They were great. In Excess was great. I never got into the Cult too much, but
they've got a couple really amazing records, the Cult. But The Cure, I love The Cure. I always loved Robert Smith because he was so weird, and he's another one of those cats like Rick Ocasek that has that weird voice that you're just like, what is that?
I think they made Edward Scissorhands off of that guy.
I think so too. I agree. Yeah. Like he's almost like albino, or he wears like really white makeup, facial makeup, and then his hair is like cuckoo crazy.
Yeah.
But he writes some amazing melody lines. Yeah. They're just simplistic melody pop lines, you know, but it's always dark. Which always crack me up. I kind of love a little bit of darkness to my rock and roll.
I do too.
Yeah.
It's part of it.
I know, right? I mean, yeah, and hello, New Orleans, where it's all about the darkness.
A dark and beautiful place.
It is a dark and beautiful place, you're right, yeah. So, let's see.
Mostly dark.
Yeah, we got a few more minutes, Mike. Is there any gigs you got coming up other than that one that you were talking about, Melwood Tavern, that you want people to come out to?
Well, let's see. We're doing... We're going to do a party with a band that I play with, a wonderful band called Solar Flannel.
I love that name.
Jesse Hall on drums, Mike Nix, Jacob Loxton, and Bill Huglin and myself. And we do a lot of Grateful Dead. We do
love that.
A lot of Neil Young and
I love Neil Young, by the way.
We do a lot of different things, a lot of good stuff. But we're going to play for Scott Likens' birthday party at Goodwood on the.
I love Goodwood.
What day is that? The 19th.
Oh, okay. Day after my birthday.
Hey, happy birthday to you.
Thank you. Wednesday's my birthday.
And then we're going to, let's see, the day before that, I'm going to be at Goodwood actually 3 days in a row. I know, it's crazy. So at the 18th.
Is Alana still down there?
Alana's working lunch day.
Yeah, I was going to say, she used to be my next door neighbor for like 6 years or something like that.
I love her. She's great.
Me too. We used to stumble over to each other's house about 4 o'clock in the morning, coming out of gigs and stuff like that, and be like, "How you doing?" You know.
Oh yeah, she's a shaker.
Yeah, she is. By the way, I was going to tell you that you have to ask her. There has been so many times where I had friends over and they were so hammered that they would leave my house, go to their car, and come back later on, and they would always stumble into her house instead of mine because the front of the house looked the same. And I don't know how many times she picked up something about to kill one of my friends that accidentally walked into her house thinking it was mine in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's funny.
I was like, lock your doors, girl. Lock your doors. But one of my favorite stories about her, though, you'll love this. One night, I come home, and I look over into her yard, and I was like, is that the sand creature from Beetlejuice?
Wait a minute, what was going on?
She had created it was huge, dude. I mean, it was bigger than me. It was huge. It was I don't know how many feet tall, maybe 7 or 8 feet tall, and like very round. And she had created the sand creature from Beetlejuice.
Yeah, the worm-looking thing.
Yeah, the worm-looking thing that looked like it went into her yard and out of her yard, and it was all laid up against my garage, and it freaked me out. I was like, what is going on? She was like, oh, yeah, we just got, we were having a good time and having a party, and everybody decided to recreate the sand creature from Beetlejuice.
She's a very creative.
Very
young
creative,
lady. I love
yeah.
her.
Nothing like coming home late one night from a gig and looking over and seeing the Beetlejuice sand creature in your neighbor's backyard.
Hey, she grows some really good vegetables too.
Yes, she does. Yes, she does. So anyway, anywhere else you're at?
I see the 18th. We're gonna do a little trio at Goodwood, and then the 19th we're gonna play Scott Likens' birthday party, which is gonna be a hoot.
So
And
basically,
then,
go to Goodwood every night this week.
And then the 20th we're gonna be there with the Dirty Church Revival.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about Dirty Church Revival. We haven't talked about them yet.
Well, Dirty Church.
I love that name.
Dirty Church is basically Danny Miller and Tim Reagan's band. I want to say they've probably been a band almost 15 years.
Yeah,
and
long time.
I've been playing with them maybe for 2 or 3.
Yeah,
but we do a lot of rock and roll, but we also kind of stick with we do a lot of that hill country blues stuff.
yeah.
But
Love that.
but really revved up, and it's a fun band, and we do some Tom Waits.
Oh
and,
yeah, we're about to take them out on some Tom Waits.
Oh, we're
yeah.
gonna have to spend some Tom Waits.
Yeah.
So that's Dirty Church Revival. It's a great band. We're right now we're using some different drummers. Chet Sargent had decided he wanted to take a break there for a minute, so we're gonna use. Actually, this past last week we played Stevie Ray's, and we had Andy Brown.
Oh, I love Andy Brown. Is he still in town?
Andy Brown is down in Tennessee, and he's doing great. He's
Good. I love him.
He really has this thing together right now, and we had a great time the other night, and we can't wait to play with him again.
Cool. I've known Andy Brown for years, off and on, just through the scene. I was a big fan of the El Rue Stars.
I was in El Rue Stars.
Oh, were you really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and,
so you were with Charlie Bach and all them? And,
in the late
later
90s.
years? Yeah.
I moved to New Orleans in, I'm going to say it was it was either 2000 or 2001. And I played with the Rue Stars in maybe, 98, 99.
Yeah.
Maybe 97.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a long time ago. But we all used to have a house on Field Avenue, and our spot was Long Shot Tavern.
Yeah.
So and Andy and I actually we weren't making a lot of money.
Yeah.
We were making some money, but we were basically broke musicians.
Yeah.
Barely getting by. One day Andy says, Mike, we need to do a gig on the side. What are we going to do? I said, come on, let's go see Dirty Phil at Long Shots.
Yeah.
And so we went up and saw Dirty Phil, and we said, Phil, can we play tonight? Can we just come and set up and play?
Yeah.
And, well, there weren't any bands before that. And he said, yeah, let's, sure. Hey, I can give you guys $250.
Yeah.
And we thought $250, boy, that was like we thought we'd won the lottery.
Yeah.
So we went in and played that night, and everything went great. And we said, hey, can we do it again? And we started to do that, and then other bands started to come in. And
cool.
and then
I love that.
And Long Shot became a thing.
I loved Long Shot Tavern. It was one of my favorite places to play back in the day.
Yeah, we had the green room, and
yeah. Oh, yeah. It was fun, man. That's some fun times back in those days.
It was wide open, and it was great, and we had a lot of fun. Pranksters played in there for years. A lot of the hippie bands, and
yeah. There was a bunch of chick rockers that I knew that played that venue too throughout the years. Yeah,
that's right. And Dirty Church used to play there all the time.
Cool, I love that.
Before I came back from New Orleans.
Yeah. Well, it's a small world, man. I love Andy Brown. I'm glad to hear he's doing good, and I need to get him up in the studio next time he's in town.
I'm sure he would like to do that.
Yeah.
We'll have to talk to him.
Yeah.
About it. He's got some stories for you.
Oh, I know. And you know what? I still have my old Rue Stars t-shirt. It's the one with the star on the front that says
a great one.
Something about rock and roll on the back. Anyway, I wear it still to this day, and people stop me, and they're like, hey, I remember that band. They always remember that band. So that's cool. I did not know you were in that band.
Oh, I was in there for a little while.
Yeah, that's wild. That's super cool. Love it.
It was. Great guys.
Another great band out of Louisville, Kentucky. Yeah.
Hey, you know what else?
Yeah. What else?
On the 25th, I'll be down. Do you guys know about Jimmy Can't Dance? Denny's
Yeah,
place?
Jenny actually stops in here quite often. He'll pop his head through that. Yeah, Jimmy
him.
Can't Dance. That's a great venue.
Yeah, a great venue, and it's kind of a speakeasy. You have to walk through another place sandwich shop and then down the stairs.
Yeah, exactly.
It's over there. It's over on 7th across from 21C.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love 21C too. That's a groovy.
It's cool
groovy
place.
space. Yeah.
Neat art gallery and all that.
I got to play for. Is it Steve Wilson that owns that? I get to play for the guy who owns 21C's birthday party last year.
All right.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was like the Louisville Ballet was there, the Muhammad Ali Center people were there, and we put together this band about, all kinds of songs about what we did, like Buck Owens tracks, and
awesome.
The set list was really interesting.
Man.
But yeah, super cool gig, and we love Denny and I go so far back. I mean, I told you we spent some crazy nights in New Orleans together, and
Yeah, you said he was one of the first guys you saw when you went down there for.
Yeah, it was
And he
first
was down
guy
there for his
I ran. Yeah.
birthday.
And I've had the most classic gigs at the Monkey Wrench over the years when he owned that venue, and I just heard he is buying the old. Was it Tooligans? The old Tooligans.
You got me. I don't know anything.
Well, from what I understand, because the guy who owns LRS is great friends with Denny, he just bought another venue. It's the old Tooligans. It's either the old Tooligans or the old Dewdrop Inn. One of the two. Which one ever it was in Smoketown, because I wasn't here then. So he just bought that, and he's making a second venue now for live music, which is awesome. So kudos to Denny Humphrey for keeping live music rocking in this city.
Danny and Jimmy Can't Dance.
Yes.
I'll be there playing solo piano on the 25th, and
Cool.
it's a lot of audience interaction and a lot of cutting up and a lot of fun. And
I love that.
they told me it was very entertaining, but I'm going to let them put the label on me.
Right, I hear you. Yeah. I've heard only great things about Jimmy Can't Dance. So, and
Great
if
jazz.
If Denny owns it, I'm sure it's a great venue.
Great jazz, great eclectic music venue, great stage, great sound guy. Corey's running sound down there.
Yep, love Corey.
And great bartenders, Marie and the other girls. And
Yeah. I do want to remind everybody, just in case they're listening, I will actually be playing this weekend for the first time. Wow.
What are you playing at this weekend, Jen?
I am at the Highland Louisville Pride Festival, which is right here in Bardstown. They shut down Bardstown Road in the Highlands, right at Grinstead and Bardstown Road. I have an 11-piece band.
Get out.
Me on drums. Jimmy Brown is on bass.
You can't go wrong with Jimmy Brown.
Donna Bivens on lead guitar. Jessica Bullock is on piano. We have 3 horn players. And then we will be backing Broadway superstar LaVon Fisher Wilson and her 5 queens of funk and soul. And 5-part harmony. I mean, come on, with horns and me and Jimmy Brown. It just don't get any better. And we went over our set yesterday. So we're doing everything from modern day Lizzo to Tina Turner to Aretha Franklin to Jill Scott, Erykah Badu.
You girls are going to rock.
Yes. And then before we're on at 2:10. Right before that, I'm going to be joining Mama Said String Band on a washboard. Yeah, because I love a washboard. They're a bluegrass band. And then from 4:30 to 6:30 at the other end down by Big Bar on the other stage, I will be with the Kentucky Beatniks, my acoustic duo, playing 2 sets down there. So I'm literally, it's my birthday weekend gig, so I'm keeping busy that day.
You're going to make some money.
That's the goal. That's the goal. Money.
Hey, you know what?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, ring the bell, baby. Jimmy Brown, I wanted to bring up another band that Jimmy Brown plays with. It's a dear friend of mine, they're all friends of mine. Chuck Sharp, who is he plays guitar with the bluegrass band Relic with the Beeblehouses and those guys. But the band is Chuck Sharp, Jimmy Brown, and Brett Hosclaw plays drums.
Oh yeah, which one? Is it Bo Deco?
No,
Oh, no, Hellfish?
it's called the Get Down.
Ah, I love that.
And the Get Down is an instrumental surf band.
Oh yes, I know about this band. Brett Holtzclaw was in here a few weeks ago talking about his surf
Brett's
band.
the drummer.
Yeah,
and Jimmy
I love
Brown
Brett.
and Chuck Sharp. And I'm going to tell you what, if you haven't seen these guys, go out and see them. I think they play down at, what's that bar, the Tiki Room?
The Limbo or the Tiki or it's the new Tiki bar. Yeah.
But you want to talk about something that's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I love
all
surf
instrumental.
rock.
And these guys they get down just like their name says.
That's right. Get down on
so
it.
go see the Get Down.
So, Mike,
Shout out to you, Chuck.
Yeah, Mike,
Jimmy,
thank you
Brett.
for coming in today. I really appreciate you talking to us about all things music, all things New Orleans, everything going on here in the Louisville music scene. I was like, you're always welcome back in here. If you ever got a free moment, come back in. And you got a cool gig going on, stop in and talk to us, about everything going down. And check out Mike Hood. He's on piano around town with almost everybody, it seems like. Go to Goodwood this week. You'll catch him.
Yeah,
right?
come see us at Goodwood all week.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you, Jen.
Hey, thank you for coming in. We're going to leave them with some Tom Waits. I'm going to spin some Downtown Train by Tom Waits.
Yeah, you right.
Yeah, you've been listening to Jyneration Nation. I'm Jen Yates, joined by Mike Hood. Tune back in tomorrow. I forget who the guest is, but it's somebody awesome. It always is.
And it's going to be fun again, I promise.
Heck yeah, it is. Here's some Tom Waits for you. I hope you have a great day, and as always, keep it groovy, man.
Yes,
Peace
indeed.
out.